Hello, this is GH Policy Pulse. We are here to continue from our last session about the 24 questions that I have developed for us to think deep about formulation, developing, and implementing a social policy. With these 24 questions, which I have centered them around 5 words, and these 5 words start with what, when, who, when, and how. In our previous session, I took you through the questions on who, which focused on who benefits from the policy, who will be affected if something goes wrong with the policy, who are those missing within the formulation, development, and implementing of the policy, and what similar issues has that policy been able to solve? So that was the questions that we asked concerning who. Hello, welcome back. Today, I'm taking you through another word which also have 4 questions. The word is what, W-H-A-T, what. And with the what, I have 4 questions, as I've said, and these questions is going to help us understand the who that in the previous session we all asked the question together. So with the what, the first question is, what issue is this policy really trying to solve? Or is this policy going to solve? What issue? Okay, so we spoke about who is going to benefit, but what issue is this policy really going to solve? And the second question is, what are the facts and opinions about this policy? There are 2 things in this question, the facts and the opinion. The facts is the necessary ingredient that we all need to cook this policy. Okay? And the opinions are the diverse views, the various views. You need stakeholders to come together to tell you, with this stakeholders engagement, you'll be able to know who is missing that we spoke about on the last session. We'll be able to know who will be affected if something goes wrong with the policy. We'll be able to know if the people we've included to benefit are the only people or we need to expand it. Hello? So that is question 2. What are the facts and opinions about this policy? And then the 3. GH Policy Pulse, we are saying what absorption proof is associated with this policy. We are using assumption because you need to assume, and then you need to, while you get the facts, you need to get the proof to support the facts. Remember, there was a question, who has solved an issue with this policy? So the assumption proof comes in. And then the last question about the what is, what information is this policy mixing? And you'll be able to know what information this policy is missing when you do the engagement with the stakeholders. Let me give you an example. For instance, in Ghana, we have school feeding program, which is a social protection policy in Ghana. When I start with my first question, the first question says, what issue is the policy really trying to solve? Before the policy was implemented, the government then realized there was a lot of school dropout. There were reports, there were media cry, there were issues from our communities. Children were not going to school enough because most parents cannot afford school fees and at the same time feed their children. And so the government decided to introduce school feeding. There are schools that probably were not even paying fees, but then we still have parents who do not have the funds to feed their kids. And so the government needed to come in to introduce a policy. So what the policy was trying to solve was to reduce school dropout or eliminate it, or probably increase school enrollment. So that was an issue. Hello. Let me take the same school feeding. So if you take the second question, what are the facts and opinions? So the fact is what I've just spoken about. The fact is there were reports, there were articles, there were journals, there were publications about children school enrollment. Okay? And so the opinions that a government needed was to have a stakeholder engagement. Remember, the number one stakeholder in education is the parent. Then comes the educators or the teachers or Ghana Education Service. Then the Minister of Health, because if they go to school and eat from the school and there are issues with the school, it will increase health utilization, and therefore the Minister of Health is also another stakeholder. We have NGOs that speak on education. You cannot take them out. We have community development officers or community agents. Remember, most of our primary educations in Ghana are from the religious bodies. So the missions, they are all stakeholders. So you cannot just introduce a policy into the public space without engaging. So you need their opinions to be able to formulate the policy. Hello? And then, what's assumption proof? What proof do you have? So the proof could probably be the rate of dropouts of school children. Okay? Probably the poverty level in some of our regions. Then the last one, what information will be missing from the policy if it's been implemented? You can only get that information when you do the engagement, when you seek for opinions. So GH Policy Pulse, just as we do in research, research has the same formula. Like I told you, that in a journalist story, you will have the 4 hots and the 1 H, the 5 W and the 1 H. The same applies to these hots, that in research, you must have an issue that you want to resolve. You must have facts and opinions. You must have assumption proof. You must find out the gaps, which is the missing information. The same thing applies to policy formulation, development, and implementation. So this is GH Policy Pulse, and this is another set of questions that I have given you. We'll come back with another word that starts with W again in our next session. You need to follow us, please, on YouTube, GH Policy Pulse. You can subscribe. You can like our posts. You can follow us on TikTok, Lydia_Desiedu. You can follow us on Facebook, Lydia Ejetitu. You can follow us on Instagram, Lydia_Esiedu. This is GH Policy Pulse. We'll come again with another session, another W, to tell us more about social policy formulation, development, and implementation. This is a critical thinking questions around policy. Thank you.